Welcome to Twisted Terrors. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. It felt like the world had been muted. No birds, no running water, no distant crack of trees in the cold. Just a suffocating, heavy quiet. That winter, Emma and David were used to the silence. Their small cabin sat in a valley between jagged peaks, a good 30 miles from the nearest town. It was the life they'd wanted. Off-grid, away from the noise, answering only to the seasons. But the snow came early that year, sealing them in before their supply run. By February, they'd fallen into a rhythm. Wood stove fires, snow shoveling, quiet meals by lantern light. It was the third week of that month when the wind changed. They noticed it one night while reading in the living room. The air outside began to move differently. Not a sharp gust or a storm, but a steady, deliberate flow, as if the mountains themselves were exhaling. Through the drafty boards, they heard it, a faint, drawn-out sound. At first, David thought it was the wind moaning between the pines, but Emma's book slipped from her hands. "That's not the wind," she whispered. It was a voice, a woman's voice. The sound carried across the valley, faint but steady, like a low hum wrapped in words they couldn't quite catch. It didn't stop with the wind. It was the wind, weaving itself through the cabin's walls. They listened for nearly an hour before it faded into the dark. The next night, it returned. Closer, clearer. Emma swore she could hear her name. David said she was imagining it, but his eyes darted to the window every few seconds. When the voice finally stopped, neither of them spoke until morning. By the fifth night, the sound wasn't coming from the valley anymore. It was coming from the tree line behind their homestead. This time, the voice was more distinct, shaped into words that bled through the howl of the wind. "Come outside." Emma froze. David's face went pale. They knew the story of Clara Hayes. Everyone in the nearest town did. She'd lived alone on a homestead up the ridge some 40 years ago. One winter, she wandered into a blizzard and never came back. Locals said her body was never found. Some swore they still heard her calling, especially during whiteouts. David never believed it. Until now. That night, they boarded the windows. David checked the rifle. Emma sat by the fire, ears straining for the voice. When it came again, it wasn't a request. It was a demand. "Emma, outside, now." The fire popped violently in the stove and Emma jumped. "Don't you dare," David warned, but she couldn't explain the pull she felt. An ache, like the voice was not only calling her name, but something deeper. Something that had always belonged to it. The next morning, the snow around the cabin was different. Smooth, except for a single set of bare footprints leading from the forest edge to their porch. They stopped at the door. David wanted to leave, hike down to the old trapper's road and head for town. But the snow was too deep, the cold too dangerous. They'd never make it before nightfall. They decided to wait for daylight and hope the voice didn't return. It came back before sunset. Louder. The wind battered the cabin, and between each gust, they heard Clara's tone. Pleading now. Almost sobbing. "It's so cold. Help me." Emma stood, her breath shaking. "She's freezing out there," she whispered. David grabbed her arm. "She's dead, Emma. That's not her." The sound shifted, from the valley, to the trees, to the porch. 3 sharp knocks rattled the front door. David raised the rifle. "Don't answer it!" The knocking stopped. Silence. Then, right by Emma's ear, though she was across the room. "Please." The lantern flickered. The walls groaned. And then the front door, locked tight just moments before, blew open, slamming against the wall. A blast of freezing wind roared inside, carrying with it a shadowy figure, pale and dripping with ice, hair matted with snow. Her eyes were black pits. Emma screamed. David fired. The shot cracked through the cabin, but the figure didn't fall. It surged forward, the wind howling with a voice that wasn't just Clara's anymore. It was dozens of voices, layered and shrieking. The lantern went out. The last thing David saw before darkness swallowed the room was Emma's silhouette, being pulled through the open doorway into the screaming wind. By the time he stumbled outside, rifle in hand, the snow was falling so thick he could barely see his boots. Her footprints, bare, like Clara's, led toward the forest and disappeared into the storm. The wind carried her voice all night, and it still does. As always, thanks so much for watching. Your support is much appreciated.